welcome to Seriously Loco, the Seriously Crazy fan podcast for El Paso Locomotive FC, a proud member of the Beautiful Game Network, and brought to you by Roughneck Scarves and Icarus FC. I'm your host, Phil Bakke, and today we've got the crew back through thick and thin, as we spoke about last time. We're still going to be here, and tonight I'm joined by my co-hosts, Mika Burrell. Mika, how's it going?
Hey, it's going, man. It's like I was telling you before we recorded. I'm just sad. Like, Locomotive are making me sad. So I'm glad it's times like this. I'm glad we have this outlet. So
it is, it's been an outlet for us in the past, and it will be an outlet tonight, for sure. And along with us, we've got as per usual, Christian Canales. Christian, how we hanging in?
Not great. for all the same reasons Mika mentioned, but not great.
Well, I promise we're more fun typically, but no, not a lot of cause to celebrate recently for Locomotive. If for whatever reason you are latching on to Seriously Loco in these dark times, but you haven't before, you can find us on all of the social platforms that of your choosing: Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and you can find us on any major podcast platform. If that podcast platform allows you to rate and review, and you feel moved to embrace the existentialism of being a Locomotive fan at the moment, then leave us a 5-star review, because in the end, what does it matter whether you left us 5 stars, whatever. I tried to get really dark. Whatever, nihilist. What does any of this matter? No. So if you feel so moved to rate and review the podcast, we would really appreciate it, as it does show us to more Locomotive fans and fans of other teams, apparently, who are all reveling in Locomotive's downfall at the moment. But I think that about does it for admin. Well, I guess the one thing I will say on admin is, for those of you who purchased Seriously Loco jerseys, the countdown continues, and we are, approaching the day when they ship, but we're still about a month away from them showing up. So just keep your eyes peeled, and certainly as soon as the shipment comes in, we'll give you guys another notification that, like, hey, we've got them and they're on their way to you. So just know that we're not holding on to your money for any like sinister reason. This is not Fire Festival. This is not FC Barcelona. You will get what you paid for. So anyways, with all of that being said, we kick off every episode with Christian's question. So Christian, what is your question tonight?
It's a simple one. I haven't really been in the mood over the weekend to think of anything too entertaining. My question is, will El Paso Locomotive FC ever win another match? I'm just kidding. That's not the question. The question is, it's simple. Sweet or sour candy?
Ooh.
That's a good question.
My favorite candy, like the GOAT candy, is sour gummy worms, but they are sweet after the initial sour, so I guess sour.
I was like, if it's, because I feel like candy by default, is sweet in the end.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so but, sour.
Yeah, but there's like Skittles and like, I guess chocolate, that falls like in the sweet category. But if you talk about like sour gummies, stuff like that, that's obviously
sour gummy worms for me. And then close second is Sour Patch Kid watermelon. Those slap, and I have to eat them at the movies. Like, it is like, that's just a thing that has to happen. So sour for me.
I think you won't find much disagreement. I think it's sour for me too. And what's funny, Mika, you mentioned the sour gummy worms, but there is a particular brand, and I don't think it's even called this anymore, but the PX brand of sour gummy worms, Patriots Choice, next level.
Oh my
next
goodness.
level. Because Trolley, which is the brand name, not as sour, which was a real gripe. That was a real issue for me. Not as much intensity on the sourness, which is probably like a... I mean, there's probably some, good mouth health reasons for not burning with the citric acid or whatever it is, But yeah, I mean, this is for me, it was something that started back with like Warheads, for those the OGs who remember.
Warheads were like a death threat. Like they wanted you to injure yourself. Like all of their marketing steered you towards causing severe harm to yourself.
Did you guys have like, I know there's been like a increase with like Stranger Things or whatever, like rehashing the satanic panic of Dungeons and Dragons. Did you guys have a similar parental panic around Warheads of like, they're bad for your mouth. Like, these are like the devil's candy.
Not the devil's candy. Oh my god, not the Warheads, but I do remember.
Isn't that crack or something?
Good lord, I do remember. Maybe you guys, if you remember this, like it was like an urban legend. I remember my cousins used to tell me this to scare me about like not Warheads, but Pop Rocks being like legit a threat to your health, especially if you then drank soda after eating them.
Yeah, your stomach would explode.
The things we believed as kids.
Believed? This is scientific.
Oh my goodness.
Scientific fact.
Speaking of those sour candy, Joe from the Striker last home game, he was passing around sour gummy worms from Mexico. And he was like, try these. They're like so different. And like they were different. Like I think they use like actual like cane sugar, not like high fructose corn syrup. I don't know, it tasted different. It was good, but I guess they sell them at like Juarez games, so those were good.
Love it. Christian, what's your go-to?
Sweet candy for me. I'm not like, I just feel like candy should be just like enjoyed, not like suffered through. So yeah, I just like sweet. Like I don't like the sour candy. I don't like candy that is spicy. Like none of that is for me.
So like Mexican candy even? Like
yeah,
really?
Like not for me. I just
Gotcha.
I want to enjoy my candy. Not like I said, I don't want to be in pain while ingesting it.
Fair enough.
Well, guys, before we get on we have a lot to cover today. We've got obviously the loss to Monterey Bay. We're talking about some kind of general Locomotive stuff in the middle, and then we're looking ahead to Friday's match against Colorado Springs Switchbacks. So definitely be on the lookout we're playing on a Friday night in Colorado Springs. But we're looking ahead to that one. But first, bit of team news in that this week, Locomotive announced the signing officially of something that we had been, reporting on, I think, for a little bit. And it had kind of been common knowledge that Artem Kholod signed officially from Shakhtar Donetsk in Ukraine. He is on his way in. And it looks like he is still firming up some visa stuff here, but ostensibly right back reinforcements signed up by Locomotive. So how are we feeling about the addition of Artem officially into the fold?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's positive. I think any like warm body that can play football is positive at the moment because again, like the injuries have just been absolutely brutal, and he does obviously fill a need on paper, the black hole of the squad, as John Hutchinson has called it. So yeah, I think he's played, like as a winger as well, but I imagine he could probably do a job at fullback too, as kind of the Nick Hines mold, where you can be flexible on that flank. And he is from a storied club in Shakhtar Donetsk, who they've trained some of the best Ukrainian players ever at the very prestigious academy. Obviously, with the situation in Ukraine, like, they've been having to play away from the Donbass arena and all this stuff. So I imagine this is a player that's gone through a lot in his young career, probably, as far as, playing at Shakhtar and then going on loan to Mariupol and all that. But generally speaking, I do think it's good. And he seems like a really nice guy. Just from our limited interactions with him, he seems very happy that he's joining the club. And I think now we just wait on the visa process, which is, that's going through. So,
Christian, I guess the question, obviously, at this point in the season is like, what can the expectation be for a guy joining with less than 10 games remaining?
I'm cynical and pessimistic about the rest of this season. I think it's a little too late, honestly. I think that at best we'll get 3 games of quality games from him. Because from what we know, like you had said, Mika, he's not ready to play on Friday. That's not where he's at this point.
Right.
So I think that, by the time that he gets in and he's done, 100% full training and integration into the team and is ready to play 90 minutes, I think our situation will already be decided at that point, whether it's a positive or negative outcome. So hopefully, we've got him for the rest of this season and at least the next season, but I think it's insignificant for this year.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's unfair to say that this is, a forward-looking signing. I think the weird angle of this signing is, I think it makes sense, and if you can go out and get a player with a pedigree like this, it seems to make sense, especially he's 22 years old, like he still has developing to do. But the right back position in particular was not an area where we necessarily needed strengthening in the future. It's a place where we needed strengthening right this second. And that's where this signing in isolation is fine. But the reality is we probably needed to do a piece of business in addition to this. I'm fine with Artem being the guy going forward, looking ahead to next season, totally. But we needed that stopgap signing, and that's what we haven't gotten. And that's more so what's questionable, because I don't think the decision to sign him is bad. I think it's a good piece of business. Looking more long term, I think the reality for Locomotive at the moment is no one's really looking long term, especially when you're down in the weeds of a 4-game losing and goalless streak.
Yeah, that's fair. And I guess that is where, and maybe this will come up later in the discussion, that is where it starts to look really circumspect, I guess, the whole notion that this is not a rebuild, because we have signed 2 players to play in that position, but neither of them, as Christian said, has been signed timely, arguably. So it's are we planning for next season and hoping to just survive to the playoffs now? So that's fair. That's fair, I think, to point out.
But with all that being said, I am excited by the by the prospect of Artem coming to the club, and I don't think it's fair to the player to assign anything, anything like that, because if the goal is, hey, this, we want him to compete for the starting right back job in the future, I'm happy with that. I'm completely fine to add a player of his quality. I think the collective kind of thought though is hey, we're in the midst of a fight right now, for the playoffs, and so just the idea that it's hey, look at this guy that we signed, it's that's amazing, but
right, what
are we doing in the short term, because it just hasn't been good enough. And I think we talked about it last time at right back, the drop off, whatever the different criticisms and things about Harry and like all of the system issues we were having, there's been a significant drop off having Matt Boehner play in the right back spot because he's a really good center back playing at right back. And there's always going to be a level of, or Ricardo Zacharias, who's a good attacking player who's been employed at right back. So like either way, there's, a level of, we're just not really connecting the dots, I guess. And that brings us to what went down last Saturday at Monterey Bay. The Seriously Loco match review. Guys, California continues to just be an absolute barren wasteland in terms of points for Locomotive, and no difference made in terms of another visit to the Bear Republic, ending fruitless for Locomotive. So, Christian, I mean, what is it about it? I mean, maybe it's not even worth rehashing about California, but what is it about like this Locomotive side on the road right now just feeling sort of, I mean, even when they are ostensibly the better side on the night, like not coming away with anything?
There's no like drive is what it looks like, and that's not just on the road either is the thing. Last home match, what was it? I'm trying to remember who we played the last home match.
Louisville.
It could have been worse for sure. Like 1-0 against Louisville is respectable, but there was just the design there. They played terribly, and they knew it. After the match, and even the game before that, man, everything seems like it was decades ago. But even the match before that, San Antonio, one of the worst matches we've ever played as a team. And it's they're just visibly not 100%. I don't want to say that they're out there and not like they don't care. It's just they can do so much more, and it's not happening. Even with all the circumstances, we know that our whole right side is a shambles, because it starts from the back. Cristiano's doing great, don't get me wrong, but he can only do so much when Matt Boehner is doing his best out there. It just seems like everyone is doing just enough to say that they're doing enough. That's just my take on it.
Well, and I mean, Mika, at the end of the day, it's not just this loss in terms of saying, we went away, sucker punch in the 88th minute, lost to Monterey Bay. It's Oakland plus San Antonio plus Louisville plus now Monterey Bay. Like at a certain point, like it stops being it's a one. Oakland was like it's just one of those games. San Antonio's like it's one of the better teams in the West. It's like the best team in the West. Louisville, like it's one of the best teams in USL. Now it's like, okay, well, Monterey Bay is none of those things, but you also can't now say like the Oakland match, it's just one of those games, because it's now 4 of those games.
Absolutely. We gave Monterey Bay their flowers on the last episode and shouted them out for their recent form, because it has been much better in terms of points and results. But this one hurts the most because we were absolutely 100% on a technical level the better side. And I thought that we started very brightly, actually. I think we were really smashing the ball into feet, passing it with aplomb, looking like we had a point to prove. And yeah, I mean, just, take a look at the stats. I mean, we literally played over double the passes they played. We dominated. And that's what is so troubling about this one to me in particular, is absolutely I'm confident we were the better side man for man. and we still, like you said, get sucker punched. So yeah, no, it's not just this loss. The context is everything. We had not scored in 3 straight games before that, and then that continues, unfortunately, with this one. So that's now 4 straight not having scored a goal when we were scoring for fun in the first half of the season, to be fair. And yeah, it's just really, really disappointing that for all of our dominance relatively, and for Monterey missing their star player in Chase Boone, then we couldn't really do anything with it. And then not only do we not even hang on for the draw, which we all predicted would maybe be the case, is the first step in the right direction of getting out of this slump is maybe just drawing, we then concede a ridiculous goal quite late. So yeah, in the context, it's really bad, and individually, this game just is, for me, the worst of this 4-game barren run because of the potential that we had to win it on several occasions.
And Mika, we talked a little bit outside. Just, I think in our group chat, we talked about the fact that it feels like at the moment, all of the players are kind of taking turns having good games and having down games, and the whole team is just not really putting it together at the moment. I mean, even just looking at a glance through the lineup, I mean, we had concerns about, we had talked about how Cristiano had been lights out recently, but we talked about the fact that Dylan struggled a little bit in the last couple of games. We talked about Ricardo Zacharias potentially maybe not having the best run. And in this one, it was like a complete flip where Maris and Zacharias played maybe some of the best football they played all season. And it was the likes of, Cristiano and Lucho, who maybe didn't have their best games. And it felt like, okay, well, now we've got the guys that we were kind of concerned about playing well, and now everybody else has dropped a level, and maybe so it just feels right now like there's this just off feeling of Locomotive where the team can't put together like a complete performance.
Yeah. Dylan Mars in particular is one that I pointed out as like I said kind of tongue in cheek, like it should be illegal to waste a Dylan Mars masterclass because I thought he was excellent, and that hasn't always been the case this season. I think we've seen patches from Dylan that have been really poor, where he's been kind of like a half second behind everyone and what have you. But in this game, I thought he was great. Zacharias as well, making really good runs, getting into position. And I just, you point out Lucho and Francois maybe being, ones that have regressed. I think that's kind. I think Lucho Solignac was absolutely shocking. And that's before we even talk about the penalty. Just his link-up play was just not there. I mean, I specifically remember a run that Zacharias made. He's clearly, like, bearing down on goal, stayed on side, timed it perfectly, and Lucho, I would think, sees him. Lucho's got pretty good vision, and he completely ignores him and tries to play the harder pass to the right, and it gets blocked. And I just, from there, I was like, it's not happening for Lucho Solignac tonight. And, I feel kind of bad focusing on him because he's, for all the issues on Saturday night, he still is like our leading scorer, which I think tells you something in and of itself. But just not a good night when you're looking for your star striker to make the difference. And he had the opportunities to do so, but didn't. Francois, like, I can kind of rationalize that a little bit personally, because I think he's been good overall. And we know he runs himself into the ground, literally, for the team, and had to be taken off in like the 78th minute. So I think he suffers too from the fact that he doesn't have like a natural link-up player on the right side. We know Matt Boehner's not going to bomb on. He'll probably tuck in more than anything. So, he's been doing what he can there. But yeah, it's like you said, not everyone can have a good night together lately. And Edison Ascona, like, he gets the start, and that's exciting. You think, okay, cool, maybe let's let's change something, right? And he gets to start as one of those like 8-10 hybrids alongside Dylan. And he's 18 years old. Like, he's 18 years old. He's on loan. Like, I don't know what really we can expect, but he didn't do anything wrong, but he was kind of anonymous, if that's harsh to say. Maybe it is. I don't know. But and then he gets taken off in the 63rd minute. So it's just not from front to back. Just not everyone's on the same hymn sheet, if you will.
And in fairness, we had a 19-year-old playing his trade in that position not that long ago and making a big difference for us. So
right,
yeah, that Ascona thing, I think unfortunately for the youngster, he doesn't have the best showing. And like you said, I think he may have demonstrated in a very, like, in this performance, he's given us a little bit of a snapshot of just how good Diego Luna is. And again, I'm not saying this to like dig out Edison or anything like that. It's just strictly like, it is hard to impose yourself on a game like from that position, and it doesn't just happen by accident. And Diego did it with regularity. So that's kind of like
right,
just demonstrating the level to like, hey, exerting yourself from this midfield position in an attack, like in the attacking third, is like, Diego wasn't doing it, by happenstance. Like he is like a differentially just like, well, he's just a different player.
Right. And then there's an argument that Edison Ascona is not even a midfielder. Like, he might actually be a forward or a winger. So, I mean, in his defense, maybe we're just that he wasn't utilized properly, but we kind of have to make do. So yeah, that's fair.
So, Christian, I mean, going back to the Lucho conversation, the reality is the penalty is obviously a huge talking point, but maybe beyond that, as Mika was kind of saying, he is still our top scorer, and it feels like this dip in form from Lucho, it's kind of been like, as Lucho goes, like, so goes Locomotive, and maybe there was no more like clearer connection than in this match due to the fact that Lucho had maybe 4 or 5 like clear-cut chances to score, and it just wasn't happening for him, and it felt like by extension it just wasn't going to happen for Locomotive.
I mean, he had every chance, this match. Every chance that Locomotive had to score was Lucho's, and he was 0 for 3 or 4 or 5 on the night, whatever it ended up being. So kind of like Mika said, and Mika saw him, and it's not going to happen for him, and once that kind of, I guess, not like he's making the determination, but once we kind of see that make that judgment and feel like that's the way it's going, then it just makes sense that if it's not going to happen for him, it's not going to happen for anyone in this match. And so it is almost unfair to him, but when you play that position and you have shown what you're capable of, that's just way of life, for a star. You have to live up to that pressure.
And I mean, with the penalty in particular, I guess it's one of 3 big chances that Lucho gets on the night, in terms of like by Opta's definition of a big chance, and it's one of the 3 that he has missed. The other 2, to his credit, are on target, but the penalty isn't, crucially. And in a stretch where a team is having trouble getting goals, penalties can be a big like turning point in terms of like, hey, we've really been working hard, we've been trying to score, we've been trying to like get on the front foot in these games and just haven't had a breakthrough. We've got this chance, this high percentage chance to score. This moment with Lucho from the penalty spot, it's not the first time that Locomotive have missed from the penalty spot. In fact, I think we've converted one of our penalties that we've been awarded from open play this year. Like,
Jesus.
I think we are 1 for 5, or maybe 2 for 5. 2 for 5. I'd have to look back through. I think it's Lucho and Gomez each have 1 scored.
I think that's right.
So I think we're 2 for either 5 or 6 at this point in the season. So either way, could be a big moment, especially in a run where this is the 4th game where you're trying to break this, scoreless streak. And Lucho makes the decision to go for a panenka and just gets it badly wrong. And again, not trying to dig out the player. He believes in his ability and backs himself in that moment. And you want a confident player taking penalties, but I mean, at the end of the day, there's just no reason he should be going for something fancy. He should put his laces through it and dare the keeper to stop it, I feel like.
Yeah, I have no idea why this decision was made. I think John Hutchinson said he spoke to the player about it because, not to put words in Hutch's mouth, but you'd have to think that the coaching staff were absolutely bewildered by it as well. Because, this is, like you said, it's a player on a barren streak. Personally, the team is also on a barren streak. Smash it. Because at least if you smash it and the goalkeeper saves it, it's like, well, sometimes that happens, and I think people could excuse that more. But when you miss a panenka, I think that's the 3 points right there, to be honest with you. I think we hold on from that position of 1-0. So yeah, it's just embarrassing, and I worry about what that might do for his confidence. I mean, we know Lucho's not necessarily a confidence player in the same way that kind of Josue Aaron Gomez is, for example, but still, that's not great. And when you end up losing the game, it's just all the worse. So yeah, I think he has to smash that there. I think that's the obvious decision. And again, if the goalkeeper saves it, then no one really blames you because the goalkeeper's not expected to save it. So it's just one of those things. But yeah, and to be fair to Lucho though, the panenka grazes over the bar. He does fool the goalkeeper, but it's just not the. You have to execute that perfectly, and it looks really, really silly when you don't.
And we're served with one of those really strange moments where a goalkeeper celebrates a penalty miss that they had nothing to do with.
They didn't save. Right. Hate that for us. I will say Siaha's very talented, though. He is quite a player, but that's neither here nor there, I guess.
He has a good game in the end, and I do think there's an element in Lucho's later chances potentially where Siaha has done well, or in some cases gotten quite lucky. I think there's a potential own goal right towards the end from Monterey Bay that Siaha kind of knows nothing about, and it just happens to kind of bounce off of him. But he's positioned himself well, and I think ultimately it is a good performance from Monterey Bay's goalkeeper, but there were multiple instances where, with Locomotive star striker facing down any goalkeeper, most often I would in the past have backed Lucho to score, more times than not, from the sort of positions that he was finding himself in, particularly from the penalty spot, and that was just it was significantly disappointing. And the manner in which the penalty was taken is just, it really is not, it's not anyone's fault but Lucho's ultimately for taking it that way. Unfortunately, you can't point to other to other players when you're standing on the penalty spot and the ball doesn't end up in the back of the net. The next kind of talking point, and this is the one, we've been going in on Locomotive and kind of the things that we didn't do well, the players that didn't play well, but there is this kind of moment in the game where one of the cliches of soccer rears its ugly head, which is Adrian Rebillar or Rebillar? How are we?
They were saying Rebillar, but that can't be right? It has to be.
It's got to be Rebillar.
Yeah. Tomato.
Rebillar. So he is on a yellow and goes into a tackle on Cristiano Francois which, I mean, arguably he should have seen red at that point. And not to say, we know, and I think we talked about it in the game against Louisville, like a lot of times you earn those sorts of decisions by like playing well and that sort of stuff. And not to say that's how games should be officiated, but it often feels that way in terms of like, these penalty shouts against Louisville, and in this case, like the red against Rebillard. What was your guys' thoughts? Like, should he have gone for that tackle on Francois? And ultimately it is the decision not to send him off is one of those old footballing cliches of the player who should have walked ends up being the player that punishes you.
It's a red card for me. I mean, he's clearing away on the breakaway, and he has no intention to play. The ball takes him out from behind. I don't know what else you need to call that. And it always felt from there that he would have some impact in the game. And to be fair, Rebillard was putting himself about quite a bit. He's very aggressive in the tackle, really very much like a terrier in that midfield for Monterey Bay. And that way it was impressive. But yeah, he should have been off for me. Christian, I don't know if you feel the same way, but just, yeah.
Yeah, no, 100%. But, I mean, we've heard this song before, right? Like, it's almost not worth talking about at this point, but it did happen, but I also think at that point, like we've said, it didn't seem like it was gonna go our way anyway. And at that point of the game, I think it was like the 70th minute or something, at that point in the game, if they go down a man, they're just gonna sit back. We're toothless anyway, so I guess we could come away with a point, which I guess is better than no points, but I guess I almost forgot about it because I just didn't feel like we were going to win anyways. But in hindsight, a point would be better than nothing.
I mean, it rounds off a performance. Like, I think Rebillard is extremely lucky to remain on the field. And he is ultimately the one that grabs the winner for Monterey Bay. But the nature of the performance, I guess, like more broadly from Locomotive, is not dissimilar to Louisville in that Locomotive have a clear advantage in terms of like total shots. Obviously a clear advantage in terms of possession, a clear advantage in terms of pass completion, all those sorts of stats that are often pointed to. And at the heart of it, Monterey Bay fashion half of the shots that Locomotive do, but the same number of shots from inside the box. And that, to me, similar to the story with Louisville, was like, were we really, we created the bigger chances, all of those things, but at the end of the day, our opponents took the same number of shots inside of our 18-yard box as we took inside of theirs. And that feels like, from a creative perspective, we are maybe not being as dangerous as we should, and we're kind of ending up on a level playing field despite the fact that we may feel like the better team throughout the 90 minutes. And it was the sixth of their six shots from inside the area that ultimately leads to the winner. I mean, while it was a gut punch, I'm interested in your guys' reactions, like in that moment, because for whatever reason, that goal to me felt just eminently predictable, and like it was always going to happen. I don't know if that was just me being fatalist, but it just felt like, yeah, if anyone's landing the sucker punch now, it's gonna be them.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like a cliche, like, you have all these chances, you make nothing of it, and then the other team goes and smashes and grabs, and it's disappointing. It's definitely disappointing. I think that's been the question mark throughout the season, even when we were scoring goals, is like, can this defense actually sustain all the bombing on that we do for 90 plus minutes? We're asking a 36-year-old Yuma to marshal that back line, and he's been fantastic, to be fair to him.
Yeah.
But he's also...
He has another good game. He has another
really
good game.
Good. Like, he has another good game. Yeah, I mean, Fatma won't tell you that, but... maybe... Well, I don't know, but he's excellent.
They give him a 7.9.
Oh, there you go. Okay. Yeah, Yuma's excellent. The leader back there, we know he's someone that takes losses very hard. Really cares about the badge, cares about the club and the fans. Andrew Fox, we know what to expect from him. And then the fullback positions are just like a merry-go-round. So I think that's always been the question. So when we concede like this, it's like, I think we always thought we'd have to score more goals to kind of make up for that. And we're not doing that right now. So it just feels even worse. But I thought I'd peek at the XG just to see. And, we have 2.12 XG to their 0.74. Obviously, probably like one whole XG of that is from the penalty spot. But even so, like, clearly we should have won. We had opportunities to win this game.
Yeah.
And Siha was really, really good. And we were just not killers in the box like we should be. And if Lucho Solignac and Josue Aron Gomez aren't doing it for you, then probably no one will. Unfortunately, so.
Mika, we can see the goal 5 minutes after Ander Egaluz exits the pitch. Discuss.
Oh man, yeah, I know. I have my narratives. No, no, I really don't think. I don't know. I don't know that that's related, but that's funny. Thought Ander was pretty decent, but yeah.
Yeah, I thought he had a good game. I do want to kind of end on like a mildly positive note, and the fact that Yuma, this will obviously fly under the radar in a loss, and maybe it's not super relevant, but Yuma completes 105 out of 111 attempted passes in this one for a 95% completion, including 8 of 10 of his long passes. So the guy went
crazy.
He's having a masterclass out here. Meanwhile, we're losing 1-0 to Monterey Bay. So, well, I guess in way of discussing this match, like in the context of the broader streak, Christian, like it has now been 442 minutes of football since Josue Aron Gomez's strike in the 18th minute against Colorado Springs Switchbacks. So Locomotive on a long goalless streak now, and it's raised questions amongst the fan base, and rightfully so. The questions have gotten a little bit back into where they were towards the beginning of the season, and I think we tempered a lot of this talk, but I'm interested in everybody's take as we revisit this like closer to playoff time, because I think we've always kind of discussed playoffs as like the minimum goal for this year. Not expecting to go on, and win the Supporters Shield or whatever, like win the West or anything like that, but making the playoffs. So in way of asking this, at Fernie Elias on Twitter asks, if the lack of results continues, will Hutch lose the locker room? Where is the fault put? The player, Hutch, the front office, or all of the above? So I guess, Christian, for you, in a streak like this, where is the fault landing?
I mean, I don't know how to answer this. Like, I think that it's beyond, players just performing. This is at the very least a coaching / like tactical problem. If it goes any higher than that, I couldn't be certain. But I think that Hutch, like we've said, isn't a new thing to say either, is just doesn't seem to be adaptable at this point. And again, also like we said last week, not sure if if that is an experience problem or like a competence problem, or how much can you adapt when you only have, like 15 full-fledged professional players. There's only so much you can do, but maybe that's where it goes a little bit higher in kind of circling back to talking about the Kholod signing. I feel like the team there should have been more done earlier to stop the bleeding. And yes, I get it, it was one thing after another and one thing after another, but all those things were happening and it still didn't feel like sure, 4 things happened at one time, but there wasn't even one solution right away. There was nothing tangible being done. I get it, things are in the works, nothing happens, instantaneously, but it is like, that's too bad. Your job is to make it work, and you are not doing that job. You being front office, the decision makers. And I think that failure at that level, above Hutch, whoever's job it is to sign the contracts, that makes Hutch's job more difficult, makes him less capable at his job, which makes the players less capable at their jobs. So I think it starts high, and everyone has their own little bit of fault, but I don't think it starts with the players. I think it starts way up the ladder.
Agreed. It's our understanding that John Hutchinson and Andrew Forrest work very closely in tandem with recruitment. Obviously, you would imagine John is the one really identifying the types of players that he wants, but Andrew has been in lower league soccer for many, many years, and knows the business side of this game. So yeah, I think you do have to look at that and say what's going on here, because we do know there's been moves that have been nearly finalized and then fall through for whatever reason, and that's football. I get that. I think we all get that, but yeah, I think you do have to look at who's actually making decisions, because it's not what the players can't do that for us. You know what I mean? They could just play, and perform. And should players be performing better? For sure. Like we said at the top of the show, like nobody seems to be putting it all together at the same time, and that's problematic. But yeah, when it's the entire team suffering, like you kind of have to look at the people who are in control of this. So does that mean they can't turn it around? No, of course not. Like, we know that this club has institutional memory in terms of success, right? And thank God for that, because we can lean on that and say, how have we arrested these kinds of slides in the past to get us where we need to be, which right now is just the playoffs. I do still think that I don't just think, it is in our hands to get there, with 9-10 games left, whatever the case may be. But yeah, we're gonna have to execute. And that's kind of where then I kind of shift back to like, well, yeah, what's going on the pitch? Because at the end of the day, that's what gets you where you need to be, is how you're actually playing. So I still think that this is a talented group of lads. Like a lot of these players are very likable and capable on the pitch. And I know that this is hurting them right now for sure. But yeah, you do have to kind of look top down, I think.
Yeah, I think both things are valid. As far as the top down, or the asking questions about like what's being done to solve a problem in the moment, is like, let's address right back. We've just talked today, August 9th, about we have a right back, due in to El Paso Locomotive.
Yeah. Oh,
Harry Brockbank. Yeah. Harry Brockbank. It was announced that he was leaving the club May 20th. And I know that wasn't the day that they knew that Harry was gone. Like, there's no way that was
right,
the same day as, like, whatever went down. So it has been months, like, that we've known that there's an issue at right back because the number one guy is gone. We knew that the the number one guy from last season we had already let go after re-signing, and the number 3 guy from 2 seasons ago was not playing any minutes in Oakland, and yet we waited until August to get somebody in. Like, there just can't be, like, there's a disconnect. Like, I don't really understand, like, why there was that level of, like, why it was so difficult to find reinforcements at right back when we were like, the immediate reaction to Harry leaving is like, Chapa's going to play right back. Chapa goes down immediately with a season-ending injury. And it's like, from there, it was kind of like, I guess Zacharias is going to play right back. And then that didn't go well because he's not a right back. Like that, and now we've settled into, like, Boehner's going to play there, and we've brought in these, like, couple of, Miles Lyons. We've brought in now Kholod as well. I'm just saying that, like, why are we taking such a long walk to get to, like, hey, Memo Diaz was probably available. And I'm not saying that, like, we should immediately go back to players and rehash, like, things that we've tried, but we know he can do a job at right back. He's done it at right back, and he wasn't playing that much at Oakland after having a pretty good season last year, I thought. So anyways, I'm using that as, like, hey, this is symptomatic of something else, like, going on where we're just taking a long time. Like, we're being really ponderous with a lot of this stuff, and it's like, why? Like, at a certain point, you've just got to be decisive about some of this stuff, and it feels like we're going through a lot of steps to get to, like, similar solutions, or, like, we're finding these long-term solutions to short-term problems, and that's, like, that's where I'm kind of, like, just feeling like there's a little bit of hierarchy versus, like, the playing squad is maybe not, it's just not connecting at the moment for Locomotive, and that's what feels like we've got this kind of, like, dissonance going on. Like you said, Mika, I think the players are 100% capable of making the playoffs. I think at the moment, the question that fans are rightly asking is, like, we are less than the sum of our parts right now. Why is that? And I think some of it has to do with, like, decision making taking time and, like, to get to a suitable solution. And the second is there is some, like, and I don't think it's, like, controversial to say that there is clearly some, like, disunity in the camp. We it's no surprise, like, we reported on the Richie Ryan situation. He is back with the team now, but, like, that can't have just gone over and been like, we're all good now. It's all good. So anyways, that's my long rant. Mika, feel free to cut as much of this as you want.
None of it.
This is my second episode in a row going on some wild, like, existential thing. But the reality is, like, it just feels like we've got definite issues in the locker room because of stuff that's gone on that we've reported on, that we, like, know happen. And it's also not being supported with, like, super responsive and, like, good plans from the hierarchy. So it's like we're kind of disjointed on both ends at the moment. And I think in the past we've been able to play through a lot of, and I'm not saying that, like, I think Mountain Star has supported the playing side, like, very well over the years. I think we've obviously found success, but I think we've been able to play through some of the, like, as we're trying to navigate, like, player recruitment or something. Like, season 1 is a good example. Jerome Kiesewetter and Sebastian Velasquez coming in, like, that was when our season really kicked into gear, but it took us a long way to get there. And we weren't so adrift of the playoffs that, like, we were able to then, like, kick on and go and make a really, really memorable and successful season. But that wasn't a guarantee, and it also took a long time to get to the team that ended up being that Western Conference finalist that we all remember. So long walk to get to. It just feels like there's a lot of things happening that are all kind of moving in different directions right now. And I think it'll take some work from our hierarchy and from the players and coaching staff to get us back into some level of squad harmony and front office harmony, where we're all everybody's working together to achieve that next level. So I can't believe I went for that long. Please cut all of that. I kind of hate myself for talking that long.
No, you got to get it out, man, because if you don't, at the end of the season, you'll just go Stephen A. So.
Okay, so the next question from Twitter was from Yancey 1389 on Twitter. He asked, "What do you need to see in the final games of the season to believe Hutch is the man for the job next season?" This is an interesting one.
I don't think there's anything that we could see or don't see that will take Hutch off the sideline next season. I think we could lose the remaining games 4-0 each of them, and I think Hutch will be on the sideline. Because it is my personal belief. I'm not all of us. I want to be very clear. This is my personal belief, and you all don't necessarily share this. That there are people in the organization who are too afraid to admit that they've made a mistake, and to backpedal or not backpedal, but to correct so quickly. So I don't think that there's anything that could happen the rest of the season that will take Hutch off the sideline, except for his personal decision to maybe not come back. If he decides that he doesn't want to come back, then obviously, as far as we know, there's nothing necessarily holding him here. But he could tank the rest of the season, and if he wants to be here next year, he will be.
I mean, I think that's probably true. I don't think that anything that he does or doesn't do will cost him his job, but I guess I took Garrett's question to mean, what do we personally want to see, and what would we do if we don't see that, kind of. And for me, if you don't make the playoffs, like, that is the goal, right? Like, we play in a league where that is how you decide the champion, whether you like that or not. It is what it is. And if you don't even qualify, if you don't even show up, if you're not even qualified for the dance, like, that's not acceptable.
You're hitting from outside the club.
And you can't even get in. I hate us. So, yeah, I agree practically. Like, I think that John Hutchinson's job is safe, and I'm not even necessarily calling for it, but I think if it were me and it was Mark Lowry or anyone, like, if you're not making the playoffs, like, I think that's a pretty clear, bright line rule. Like, you need to do that. And I know it sounds simplistic, and we know that qualifying can be as simple as getting hot at the right time, but that's the measuring stick that we have to use in USL Championship, because that is how the champion is decided, right? We don't get to just, like, climb up the table and win the league like that. And even if that was the case, we're 6th or whatever. Like, I don't know. I don't even look at the table anymore because it's honestly just depressing. But that's kind of where I see it. But Christian, I'm sorry to, like, go back to you, but, like, you said that you think maybe those in the organization would not admit to having made a mistake. Are you saying that it was a mistake then, or to hire?
So that takes me to kind of like your interpretation of the question, which I completely agree with. I think that is kind of the barometer, and it's kind of the you either hit this goal or you don't. And if we the playoffs, then yes, I think it was the wrong decision. I think that when you accept this job, that is the bare minimum expectation, and you either meet it or you don't.
Yeah. Let's see if Phil is any nicer than we are. Are you a benevolent GM?
No, but it's because, so here's the thing. Like, I think it goes a level beyond, like, because Locomotive, obviously when it started, like, there was no expectation. Like, we didn't know what to expect. And until the bar was set in season 1 of, hey, this is a team that makes the playoffs. Until that bar was set, no one had any necessary expectation of, like, what we were going to do or not do. The difference is, and this goes back to my rant from last week, is the core of the playing squad is the same that finished near the top of the Western Conference last year. Like, if we had done a huge, big squad overhaul, like, yes, I know we've integrated a handful of new players, and I'm not, like, discounting that can be difficult. The core of the playing squad is still the same, that, like, made the playoffs comfortably and was top of our division. You know, I know it was a different format and all that, but top of our division, all of those things, like, one of the best teams in the Western Conference, you know, regardless of the loss to Oakland in the playoffs. So to drop off to not making the playoffs, to me, from the position that we were in last year, is unacceptable. Like, that is the why it would be so disappointing and so, I think, like, damning to miss the playoffs from the position that we were in. Because if he was taking over a non-playoff team and we're like, he must make the playoffs to be successful, well, that's not really...
That wouldn't be fair.
That wouldn't be fair. But we're talking about, like, he took over one of the best teams in USL last year. Bar none. Like, I would have put us against anybody. And I know that sounds stupid because we lost to fucking Oakland. But I would have taken us against anybody last year in a one-off. Like, did it go well? No. Was it partially because I think our manager was 1 foot out the door during the playoff game? Yes, I do. But the, like...
Ooh.
But, like, I just think that going from this is one of the best teams in the West to we're now, like, borderline playoffs, that, to me, that drop off, regardless of, like, because the core of the team is the same, I don't think that you can sit and say, well, we just gave it our best. It's like, no, this drop off was significant. And there's got to be answers for that. Like, there's got to be a reason. And, it, you know, I think there's a lot of mitigating circumstances, but to be level on points with Vegas and with them having 2 games in hand and us being in the last playoff spot right above LA Galaxy 2, I don't see that as being the level of this team given the quality of the players. So...
Let me ask this too. I'm sorry to, like, take over, like, co-hosting duties at this point, but, like, because I was speaking with Kevin Quintana about this, actually, is, like, what would be our take on where we are in the table and at this point in the season if we were told at the beginning of the season, hey, actually, yeah, we are going to rebuild.
Yeah, that's the exact point that I was going to make, is it's about this, right? It's about what we were sold at the beginning of the year. That this was not a rebuild, that this is a team that that continues to have the expectation and will continue to meet the expectations that they've built for themselves over the last 3 years. And all the, you know, the roster turnover and everything, all the injuries, everything that's happened there, I don't think it's an excuse, because even just this match against Monterey, with maybe the exception of Matt Boehner having to play at right back, this is not a 6th place, 7th place squad. There is so much talent on the field. Lucho Solignac, Cristiano Francois, Dylan Maris, Evan Newton, Yuma, Andrew Fox. Like, last year, obviously Evan Newton wasn't with us last year, but those were all very, very high ballot selections for, like, Team of the year, as Phil is showing his Logan Ketterer shirt.
Oh God.
That's a whole other can of worms though that we won't get into. But those are all players that were, you know, you could argue were Team of the Year players. Eder Borelli, who hasn't been featuring the last couple of weeks because of injury, but the talent is there, and you know they are not Hutchinson's players, as I'm doing that in air quotes. You know, he didn't bring them into the fold necessarily, or bring them onto the squad, I should say. But as a coach, literally your job to motivate those players to be the best versions of themselves, and that is not what we've seen. So I think that's the problem, is that, you know, we were sold that this is the year we're going to continue doing this, and it's going to continue being great, and it hasn't been. And if I was told at the beginning of the year, you know, I'm coming in here and I'm going to do my thing, and it might not click right away, you know, but give it time, then I think I would be more forgiving. But that's not what we were promised at the beginning.
I just keep looking at Vegas, who are right above us in the table, like technically above us in the table. They have 12 less goals than us this season. 12 less. And they are level on points with us. And it just, like, I don't know. There's just something like so disappointing about. I think this is maybe the hotter take for those who are non-Locomotive fans. I don't think the level of the West, I think there are some very good teams, but I don't think the teams around Locomotive, as I like look at them, I don't see a bunch of teams who are like scary good. Like, I think San Antonio is a very organized team that gets very good results. I don't find that they are not like City or Liverpool or whatever. They're not like blow you away type of team. Loyal have been on a very good run of form, maybe a little scarier than they were. But, like, again, there's just, like, none of these teams are, like, next level, oh, my God. Like, Phoenix a couple of years ago, where it was just, like, how is anyone getting anything off of this team? Like, they're just this indomitable, like, force. They have high-flying attack, amazing defense, like, all of these things. There's not a team that I look around and think, like, with the group of players, they're just miles better than us. Like, pound for pound, like, oh, this team is just like out of sight. Like, and that's I think what's really the most frustrating thing about this season is that I don't look around and say, oh my God, well, they have so and so. That's why they're just like head and shoulders above us. Because I think Locomotive have those type of guys. And it just hasn't like actually come together into something like cohesive yet. So,
pain.
Do Locomotive make the playoffs? That was Garrett's last question. Do Locomotive make the playoffs?
No. I just don't. I it's still in our hands, and Hutch was unequivocal about that today in the post-match training session, and I said that too, just not even 10 minutes ago. But I just, everyone has so many games in hand, like, and what's really.
And that's the thing, is I don't know that it technically is. Like, I think
yeah.
Technically Galaxy 2 or Phoenix could both. Now, do I think Galaxy 2 is going to win out? Like, probably not, but Phoenix definitely could. And if Phoenix win out, we're out. Like, that's right. Unless like Vegas could drop out, but in terms of it being in our hands, I don't know if it technically is anymore.
Well, in Vegas, I might be making this up, but I thought John with USL Tactics was recently opining on how Vegas's underlying numbers are trending really well for this time of year, and so I don't know, I might be making that up. But and then Sacramento, you know, they've got 3 games in hand. We have to hope that their Open Cup exertions are going to negatively affect them in the league, but still 3 games in hand, like, I don't see them blowing that. It's New Mexico United are retooling with Kevon Frater having been signed. Colorado Springs, we'll get onto them, I guess. But yeah, and then Loyal and San Antonio, I think, are untouchable at the top up there. So it's right now, I just don't see it. Even today, I mean, John Hutchinson said 3 or 4 times in the post training is training was okay. And it's like, well, why? Why is it okay? Like, I mean, yeah, we've lost 4. These are human beings. They're sad, but like, it should not be okay. Like, we are in crunch time. What has made it okay?
My day at work today was okay. Like,
yeah, I mean,
and we all know what that means,
right? And like in a way, like I appreciate the candidness, but that is to me, like at this point, that is worrying. Because what does that mean? Like, are they? I'm not gonna say they're downing tools because I think that's way too like far, and I have no evidence of that. But like, why is it okay? Like, it's too many leaders on that squad for it to be okay. I can't see a Yuma or someone putting up with a lackluster training session. So I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but just the way that he repeated it multiple times to me was like, yikes.
Yeah, and I took that as kind of what I was saying earlier, in that if it's okay, then that is on him. Like, as the manager, I believe you set the tone, for what your practice sessions are like. So if it's okay, it's because you were just okay. So, in short, like, do better, I guess.
Jeez.
Hey, I mean, it's not, well, and it's not, I don't know, like, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong here, and maybe I am, but I want to say, like, in the past, Hutchinson has been pretty, like, forthcoming with praise about, like, how well they've trained before a game, so it is kind of different for him to say that training was just okay.
Right.
I don't know.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. That just struck me. It just struck me, and then I think Joe from the Striker, he had like a little thread going on of just kind of like the highlights of that presser, and he even put that in there, and he put in quotes okay, and it was just like, okay's not good enough, is it? Not to me, not to a lot of Locomotive fans. So
I think, and I wanted to, because I said I'm kind of like, I'm giving all the, I'm throwing in all my pessimistic takes at this point, but when it comes to do we make the playoffs, like it's an unequivocal no. And I told you guys in the chat on Saturday, looking at the schedule that we have the rest of the season, like I think we're lucky if we come away with 7 or 8 points from the remaining matches. I realistically think we'll get 4. But I think optimistically 7 or 8, but realistically 4, which means that like everyone above us could literally lose every game remaining in the season and still wouldn't have to worry about us taking their spot on the ladder. So I think that, I hope that the players continue to play and show up, but just based off of what we've shown in the last 4 weeks, that this looks like a team that will only get 4 points out of the last 9 matches.
And I mean, with any luck, they'll put this up on the whatever. They'll send this to every player, and they'll just play lights out the rest of the season.
Lest we tear the team down.
And I hope that. Oh my God. I was just gonna say.
Cut that.
No, I mean, I was gonna say, like, this is not. I hope I'm speaking for you guys, but certainly for myself, like, this is not fun. Like, I don't find it fun at all to criticize this team and be frank about what we think is going on. Like, this hurts. Like, this ruins my weekend when we play like this, because I love this club because they represent my city. I've gotten to know some of these players. Like, they're just like, these are people like in our community. You know what I mean? Like, this sucks. Like, I'm not finding this fun at all. Like, I know some people can, they find it fun to just like rant and troll, and football Twitter can be very like toxic that way, but this is not fun for me. And I'm sure for you guys, I'm sure I'm speaking for you guys, that we're deeply like hurt by this, honestly. Like, it sucks.
And yeah, any of the laughter that you've heard over the last half an hour is legitimately us just trying to stave off the
existential
the abyss.
dread.
Like, it's just
fighting off the demons.
Exactly. Like, this is it. Yeah. It gives us no joy to have to talk that way about Locomotive. And I think it's out of a deep sense of caring for the club that we want to make sure that, like, the way that it's being run, the way that the playing staff's being engaged, the way that coaches are engaged, like, we want the club to be run by the right people so that they can be successful and represent the city well and represent the club well. And so that's any sort of like concern around that is strictly from a place of, we want the people in charge of the club to be like good stewards and to not let it become whatever, whatever, without bringing it into like football Twitter terms, but like, we don't want to go through like the banter era of El Paso Locomotive. Like, it's been a serious club since it was founded, and we want it to remain that way. Like, that's the reason that we, dig deep into this stuff. But the Seriously Loco match preview. The good news, guys, as we look ahead to Friday, the good news is that the club that we are playing on Friday, Colorado Springs Switchbacks, is also down pretty bad at the moment, because they've had a run of 4 games, not quite as bad as Locomotives because they have 2 draws in there, but the 2 draws that they do have are not good. And then they have 2 pretty significant losses either side of those. So Colorado Springs Switchbacks, fresh off of a 3-3 draw in which a 92nd minute Haji Berry penalty was the only thing that salvaged the points in Orange County. Locomotive make their way to Weidner Field in Colorado Springs to take on Switchbacks. Form pretty spotty. They got hit with some pretty big losses from San Diego Loyal and Phoenix recently. So what do we make of Colorado Springs as a potential opponent? And is this like, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, is this a good time to play Colorado because they've been struggling, or is this a bad time to play Colorado because we've also been struggling and they might be looking for a big sort of statement revenge game?
I really hate to like just throw myself into the pessimism, but I'm not looking forward to this because we're still on the road, and we know that Weidner Field can be a tough place to play, and yes, Colorado Springs, I think they've got like 2 wins in their last 10, so it's not been great, but the difference between this shocking run of form for Colorado is that they've built up enough in the bank to weather that by being so good in the first half of the season. That's number 1. Number 2 is, despite some of these losses and draws, they're still scoring goals. So they're always in these games, except maybe Phoenix Rising, San Diego Loyal as well. But like, yeah, I just think that it's going to be tough. And like winning, like what we saw in the 10-game undefeated streak, losing can also become a habit. I'm just afraid that the rot is like too deep at this point. But obviously I would love for us to get something out of this Friday night game. That's kind of a weird one, like, right after work, right after a long week. Let's see how it goes. But yeah, I'm still not looking at Switchbacks like they're a joke because they're still scoring plenty.
Yeah, especially at home, of those matches that Mika referred to, where they did not do so hot, the 4-0 loss against Phoenix and the 3-0 loss against San Diego. Those are both away. But, if you look at their form at home, even their last match against Orange County was on the road, and they still scored 3 there. They scored 3 and draw against Charleston at home. They score 4 against Galaxy and win at home. before that. They lost to Loyal, but they scored 2 there. Before that, they were home against Sacramento and scored 3 there. So their form, their poor form is on the road, and where we're catching them, and they are still, like Mika said, they're still doing what they're really good at, which is scoring the goals. And if they do that, then best you can hope is for us to score goals, which we have not been doing. So, on paper and in context, it would appear that we don't stand a chance. But it is, anything can happen on any given match day. So do I think we'll win? No. But to be a blowout necessarily, also no.
I guess the question in terms of maybe reactionary transfer business, is there a case to be made for Locomotive going out and signing Saeed Robinson? Maybe grab a goal or two in this game against his former club. Shout out to Saeed Robinson, who was like just a customary goal scorer against the old version of Switchbacks. But no, in all seriousness, I guess the question becomes, if Locomotive are to get something from this game, what is the one, maybe the aspect, I hesitate to say player, because I think we know that the real answer is, like, we'll need a complete performance, like we were talking about in this Monterey game, where we didn't get good performances kind of across the board. We got a couple of really good performances and then a lot of kind of meh performances. But what is the aspect of Locomotive's game that will need to change the most from this 4-game run? Like, in what area of the attack, in what is that, like, aspect of our game that you're looking at it and being like, if this goes differently, like if we're able to do this well, or we're able to execute this thing, then what is that thing that will lead to victory against Colorado?
Personally, for me, I think just being more proactive in the box, because there has been a lot of service into the box, and I just don't see some of our forwards and some of our midfielders making sprints that they would make a month or two ago. I think the passiveness of our game, maybe passive is even strong of a word, but just the lack of killer instinct in the box needs to change. I think our forwards and some of our attacking midfielders need to get on the end of chances, because they're being created, and it's just not fair to the wide players who are slinging them in, and just nobody's getting there. And actually, John Hutchinson acknowledged that against Louisville. That was a major issue. So I just like to see more intensity when we get the ball into those areas, and more. I mean, you're gonna have to go into places where it hurts, right? I mean, you're gonna have to contest headers. You're gonna have to, scramble, and maybe get your boot stuck somewhere that it hurts. Like that's where we're at right now. We're gonna have to really put in a shift. So, because obviously controlling the ball is not necessarily a problem, but getting even just the scrappy goals at this point is what we need. We can't just walk it in. So that's what I'd like to see.
Yeah, I'd love to come up a little more different, but it's finishing. Finishing is the problem. The defense has been fantastic, for a long time now. The Oakland result notwithstanding, the last time that we lost a match and gave up multiple goals was at least in May. I'm going back because I'm curious now. The last time that we lost and gave up multiple goals was against Central Valley Fuego in the Open Cup game. That was the last game that we lost that an opponent scored more than one goal.
Prior to Oakland, and
yes.
we didn't score against Oakland, so that was kind of moot. They could have scored one, like.
Yeah, that's true. So it's about us scoring. That's been the difference for a month now. Yeah. Is that we haven't put a ball in the back of the net. And I think it's also like think it's not the creation. For a few weeks, that has been the issue, but that was not the issue last week. So maybe we've turned that corner. It's the finishing, and the taking of chances that you're given. Like, if we miss another penalty in this match, I'll scream. Like, you can't miss a penalty shot when you haven't scored in a month. Like, when your team hasn't scored in a month, when you personally haven't scored in longer than that. Like, you like we've said, I'm repeating everything we said at the beginning, but you've just got to bury that ball and don't be so fucking extra. Just shoot it.
This team is driving us to madness.
It is. So the thing that I was kind of thinking, I mean, it's along similar lines, but to me, the one thing that I think I've become, I think, like, the amount of chances or the amount of crossing that we do is like reaching Moyes-esque levels, like at Manchester United.
Jesus.
Where it was just like cross after cross after cross. And I'm like, if it was working, because there are teams out there in world football who cross the ball a lot and score a lot of goals, and that is amazing. We are not one of those teams. Like, we don't score a lot from crosses. I don't think we've ever really been a team that scores a lot from crosses, to be honest. Like, maybe there was a period of last season where we scored from an inordinate amount of crosses and corners and stuff because Maka King just decided to become whatever, Fox in the box. And Andrew Fox himself scores from a lot of like headers, but our forwards typically score from like getting in behind or like creating a yard of space and creating a shot, or, you know, we don't have like a ton of goals to look back on and say like, oh yeah, floating across to the back post and like this is where, you know, and meeting them there. Like, that's not really the type of goal that we score that frequently, or that our forwards score. So I would love to see us try to create more through the middle and like maybe not settle on I've made it to the byline, I'm now going to cross the ball. Like, that's and I think we just kind of like we kind of get in that mode where it's just like, okay, I've dribbled and now like and I know corners played a part in this, but Dylan Maris against Monterey Bay has a very good game. Very good game in the middle of the park. He attempts 11 crosses and completes 1. Like, so it's not been good. Like, it's not been a great avenue for us. Like, and I get that corners probably play the biggest role there, and maybe, you know, maybe there's something to that. But my biggest thing is just like, I'd love to see us trust ourselves to play the ball through people, because I think we can. Like, I think we have the quality. We don't have to play around these teams. Like, we can play through, we can break lines, we can play through teams. And I think it's maybe in terms of, I know we've gotten questions in the past or people have commented about like, I think we miss Diego Luna. And I don't think that's necessarily true in like a binary sense of like, we were scoring goals and now we're not, and the variable is Diego. But the one aspect of Diego's game that I think we have been missing is he loved to break lines either on the dribble or with a pass. He loved to play the ball centrally. He loved like to create with those little 1-2s, all that sort of stuff. And like, I haven't seen us try to play through people recently. And that's where I'd love to see, even against a good team like Colorado Springs, I believe that the quality of our individual players, we have the ability to play through these teams. So don't settle for the ball's out wide and it's going to get floated into the middle, because that's just not the type of attack. It's not the type of strikers we have. It's not the type of attackers we have. Like, if we had gone out and signed, you know, Aris Biggs or whatever, then like totally fine. Float crosses in all day because we've got this, you know, 6'7" Mormon guy in there and it's all good. But that's just not the type of attack that we have. And I think, you know, for Lucho being a bigger guy, like, he's not a target man, you know? Yeah, he's taller, but he's not a target man. And Yeah, so I would just love to see us try to play through a little bit, try to score goals like from slick interchange and stuff. And I think a lot of our goals this season, up until a certain point, like were scored in that way. Like I don't think we were scoring a bunch from crosses. So it's just been weird to see us kind of go to this place where we're just really reliant on volume of crosses into the box. And it's not working. So I'd love to see us try something else. So, anyways.
Yep.
So
no, I think that's a good shout. Midfield.
Yeah.
Midfield feels more like a pressing unit than a creative one, which is fine. But yeah, I'd like to see the like Samaras and them break lines, like you said.
Well, especially given the fact that like, well, and I guess this is like whatever a Klopp thing, and you know. Sorry for making a Liverpool comparison, but like there was this point where the midfield, like Klopp's Liverpool midfield, became very utilitarian and was not a creative and goals outlet because the fullbacks became more creative and they were more of the outlet of the creativity. But Matt Boehner is not Trent Alexander-Arnold. Like there's a reason that it's not necessarily equating. And Matt isn't necessarily the one driving the crosses in. It's more so Cristiano. And I'd love, or like Nick Hines has been putting a lot of crosses in and all those things. But either of those players, I'd love to see them centrally because we know Cristiano has goals in his game from his time at Miami. Mm-hmm. We haven't seen him like inside the width of the goal. Like he's constantly out on the, so far out on the wing that his option in attack is I'm going to float this ball in and hopefully someone can get on the end of it, where I'd love to see him try to play a 1-2 with somebody and get in behind and have a shot. Like that's, I don't know. It feels like we have opportunity there. And a lot of our goals this season have come from midfielders. Like, I mean, Eric Calvillo was like, for a stretch of probably 4 games, like he was like the only person scoring goals for a little bit.
Yeah.
So anyways, I just think there's a lot, we're leaving a lot on the table by constantly kind of just playing this like volume game of crosses.
Yep.
Man, we've been ranty tonight. Real ranty. This is going to be a horrible listen. I apologize to everybody.
Getting it all out.
I apologize to everyone in advance. So, guys, the question now is, are we going to beat Colorado Springs? I don't know if I even want to do this. Are we going to beat Colorado Springs in Colorado?
I think we'll draw. Surely we can't go 5 games without scoring, right? Like, surely. I'll say 1-1.
Christian, it is. We are currently on the longest scoreless streak in Locomotive's history. Does it get worse?
I think so. And I've been just an absolute downer this whole episode, and I intend to see it through to the end of recording. But no, just honestly, just be realistically. I think it's another 1-0 loss. I think that is just the way things are going for us right now.
Oh my god.
Are we mentally prepared? Are we mentally prepared for that?
I am, and I think that's the sadder part.
You've successfully insulated yourself certainly from the from the hurt.
It's called self-care.
Yeah, I mean, it is tough because it's just tough to see where the goals are coming from. I think we know the team has goals in it. We know that we know we can get at Colorado Springs. We did it 5 games ago. But in that game too, we didn't put them away. Like we got the goal through Gomez but we didn't do to Colorado Springs what we should have, which is, I mean, that game should have been over and we should have been kind of high and dry, given what happened, given the red card eventually, all of the things that transpired, and we made like pretty hard work of it. Lucho gets sent off for time wasting, etc. But I think now 4 games into this streak, it's just really hard to see like where the break is going to come. And I think the penalty last week was what, or on Saturday was that moment of like, here it is. This is the break that we were just desperately crying out for. And when that didn't go in, now it's like, okay, well, what the hell is it going to take for us to put the ball in the back of the net? So I definitely get the pessimism, Christian, because it's just tough to see where it's coming from. But to your point, Mika, I think all it takes is one of those scrappy moments. All it takes is, I mean, I think about, and this was in a losing effort, but I think about Manchester United's goal against Brighton at the weekend. Opposing goalkeeper slaps it off the knee of his own defender into the goal. Like, that sort of moment could be enough to like get Locomotive just like feeling it again. It's like we just need a break to go our way. And so while I definitely, it is tough to see like where it's going to come from, I'm just hoping that in this game against Colorado Springs, we're creating enough to cause Colorado enough problems to where we may just force it home. And yeah, I mean, if whatever, it may be Gomez doing a fullback dive over the, whatever, just carrying the ball over the goal line. But I'm just hopeful that in this game we can find a way to break this streak. Because the idea of getting back onto this podcast and being like, well, guys, it's another game, no goals still, like, that's just too depressing. I can't think about it.
Guess we'll see.
That we will. Well, if you've stuck with us for the bleak whatever hour and a half that we've gone, I first of all, I appreciate it. Secondly, you can subscribe to this Doom podcast on any of your major podcast platforms. Hopefully we're not talking in similar terms for much longer about Locomotive, because they figured it out and everything is fine. So if that's not the case, you can join in the misery on your podcast platform of choice and on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. Yeah, I mean, despite all of that, it is nice to be back, I will say. Second week in a row, I get to hang out and talk Locomotive with you guys, which at the end of the day is pleasant, despite the fact that we're extremely frustrated.
Yeah, you know what? I forgot that you'd been, until you just right now, like, I forgot that you'd been out for so long, and I think that just speaks to, like, how normal this is, like, how getting back to normal this feels. Like, it didn't feel weird.
Well, I appreciate that. I feel like I've been talking entirely too much since I've come back and gone on these big picture rants. But yeah, hopefully everybody is still enjoying it. Hopefully you're finding a little bit of solace and a little bit of an outlet through the podcast. And we'll certainly be along for the ride, for better or worse, the rest of the season and into whatever, infinity and beyond. So hopefully you guys have a good rest of your week. Friday will come quickly, I hope. And with any luck, we'll have a nice little morsel of a win to talk about next week. Although I know we're all tempering our expectations because it just hurts too much. So anyways, enjoy. We'll be back to talk about the result against Colorado Springs, and until then, stay loco.